Welcome back to That's Church. I'm Emily Call, here with my sister Ashlie Sanders. Today we have a bonus episode for you that we've never done before. We are diving into the fascinating and polarizing new movie, Heretic. Spoiler alert, this episode contains major Heretic spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie yet, we recommend you watching it first. Whether you find the movie fascinating, troubling, or somewhere in between, it's sure to make you think about faith, truth, and the human search for meaning. For sure. This film tells the story of two sister missionaries that are LDS who visit an investigator's home only to be introduced to a religion that he claims is the one true religion after he spent years of personal research. Ashlie and I are active members of the LDS Church, and we are joined by our brother, Jake Coon, his wife, Mandy Coon, and our good friend, Cheryl Stout. They were all once LDS, but have since left the church. They've each developed their own personal beliefs, making this conversation super interesting and rich with varied insights, perspectives, and experiences. It's very fascinating. Fun fact, both Jake and I served LDS missions as young adults, as I'm sure many of those that are listening have as well, but it just adds another layer to the discussion. Also, a little surprise, our next episode is featuring an interview with Cheryl about her inspiring spiritual journey and the unique philosophies that shape her life. Watch for that to publish. But for now, let's dive into Heretic. Let's first talk about the correlation to the church, like how accurate it is.
Well, I'll just say, because I brought up porn, I was intrigued about how they acted, like, if, like, these are real Mormons, right? So, in the first 5 minutes, I'd say it was a little extreme when they started talking about porn, but I guess to their defense, like, they were sitting on a bench with it was like a condom ad, right? So that's what brought it up. They weren't just randomly talking about porn, but I don't know that I'd imagine like two girl missionaries talking about that. But I think after that, I think it was spot on for the most part.
Yeah, and Jake has served a mission in Spain, and I served a mission in LA. And I think that part, I felt like it was not necessarily that they wouldn't talk about that. I think if they were to talk about that and they were in an open space like that, they'd be like looking around like who's listening. And because it is very expected for LDS missionaries to be representatives of Jesus Christ. So you wouldn't want people to hear you talking about something like that. And also, so I could see it happening maybe like in their apartment or something, just be like shameful, you know, like she wouldn't just say it like it was something normal, right?
I think the reason it's in there, because I've wondered this too, like that was kind of random, but I think it shows a little bit how like worldly things are so looked down on in the Mormon culture or in a lot of like religious cultures, and how she had to like quickly turn it into like, because she kind of like ended up bearing her testimony almost a little bit at the end of that conversation. But she said something like, and that's how I knew there had to be a God, because and I don't remember, maybe you guys remember better than I do the specifics of why she said that, but she was like pitying the porn star and kind of used that to like bear her testimony of why she believes in God. So it seems out of place and like not a realistic thing people would talk about, but that part seemed realistic to me, that you use something worldly and like kind of pity them and be like, well, they have something, we have something they don't have. And it's so sad.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I agree with Jake that I think I could see it more on like maybe like male missionaries more than female ones. But I do think it's an important theme to have in the show, because pornography is huge within the LDS Church. And I think it's because it's like so taboo. Pornography, and they have like pornography, 12-step for pornography, and then body dysmorphia. So you have like men that struggle with pornography and women that struggle with body dysmorphia a lot. Those are two very common things that people struggle with within the LDS Church. And So it's a good thing to put in the movie, just to have people think about, like, why is that? Why are these two things such a big part of our religion, and why do people struggle with it? I think it has to do with a lot of shaming and perfection culture, and that's a lot that we could get into. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Cheryl? That scene?
I think that it just kind of humanized them both in a way where they were having this conversation that's totally not something missionaries would typically or should talk about. But it kind of humanized her. And I think it also made her, I guess, near the end of the movie. I mean, throughout the movie, like, she kind of comes off as this, like, ditzy, innocent, like, oh, I'm just da 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 da, like, I'm gonna pound my stomach with my hands, you know, like Mr. Reed.
Drum roll.
Like that. Yeah. But she does come off when she was like using her brain and really being smart, and like she knew about that prayer experiment, and she was the first one to say, let's just walk through the disbelief door. Let's go. And she came off, especially with 8 people in her family. She was born and raised Mormon. She grew up Mormon. It kind of was expected of her to go on this mission, it felt like, where the other one seemed to be more converted, in my opinion, even though this one, but it also humanized her a lot more. I thought it was a conversation to kind of make them look like regular people who are just trying their best and trying to live the standards that the church wants them to live, even though they're curious humans, you know.
Wow. I thought the characteristics of the missionaries were very accurate to LDS missionaries, but like there is a certain cadence that missionaries have, LDS missionaries, and they didn't have that. So I thought that was interesting because, I mean, it's of no consequence, just something that I noticed, just as if we're looking at like accuracy. But I liked how their characteristics and the way that like their innocence but also like the innocence of Sister Paxton, but then also Sister Barnes was super smart and knew what she thought and believed and had knowledge and information. As a previous missionary, I really saw myself in both of them. I could really see myself being both ways at different times in my mission. So it was really kind of emotional for me after. I've heard that people can get emotional during the movie. I was just in it during the movie. I was so glued and all about what's next. But then as soon as I left, Ashlie and I were driving home and I just started crying. I was just telling her, like, I really see myself in both of these women as a missionary. And I think it was because I was so innocent and naive at times. And I also went into so many situations that were so scary. And I look back and think I could have been raped and murdered so many times on my mission. And there are people that talk about how there is no way, like there's LDS people that say there's no way that LDS missionaries would go into a house like that without knowing that the wife was home or whatever. I 1000% would have 1000%, because I was of the mind personally, and my companions usually would follow my lead or would be convinced, you know, like I did such dumb things because I was of the mind that if it's God's plan, we need to make sure that they hear it. I would have thought of that situation as, oh, his wife is home. It's fine. We are obeying the rule because he said his wife is home. And there's a storm outside and it's freezing and he's so nice. And
like led up to them being so desperate to go in. They kind of like set that up to be like she was so distraught that she got pantsed and everyone saw her garments and she was humiliated. And she said, like, right before they knocked on the door, she said, people think we're weird. And they were talking about how she had never had a baptism, and the other missionary was like, let's get you one. Like, they set it up for them to be so desperate to go in that house and not look for, I mean, even you would have, would have done that, and you, you're desperate for baptisms.
Yeah. And you're also taught on your mission too, like God's going to protect you. Like your garments, your magic underwear will protect you. God's going to protect you. And they have a false sense of safety. And it's just because you feel safe doesn't mean you are safe. And so they felt more comfortable or naive to do that, because I feel like they have this false sense of safety a lot of times, where you're taught in church that you'll be protected by God or things, or if something bad happens, it was God's plan, and something, it was for a reason.
Yeah.
I remember walking down the street on my mission saying that, like, don't you just feel so protected right now? And like, we really truly felt like we were in a bubble, like physically in a bubble. And when I said that, it was nighttime, and we looked around and there was like nobody else around. So we should have been scared. And I think my companion even said, like, should we be scared? And I was like, I feel good. Like, I feel like we're protected. We're fine. And because of that, we did, like, we went into a church with a guy one time, and it was a single man, and he didn't, nobody else, but we were like, we're in the church. We're in our church, so we should be safe. And they'd say you can visit them in public places. So to us, we're like, this is a public place. It's our church, and our church is safe. So many dumb things. Like, I think there could be more education in that space in the church with missionaries, for sure, for safety reasons. So,
Well, I think aside from education, like, I think that age, you're just kind of naive and don't really realize, your brain's not fully developed. Like, I remember I was a male missionary. Like, I feel like probably males would feel more safe generally, but I remember in my very first area in Spain, I went into a public restroom and I was at the urinal, and this like creepy guy was like talking to me and making just like disgusting comments to me. And this was like, I'm brand new, first time out of the country, and I kind of just brushed it off. Like, I don't think it really phased. I mean, it was like in the moment, but then I just kind of moved on.
wow.
Yeah. Dangerous things can happen to men and women too on their missions. And women definitely, though, like, I think the theme of this show is I think it's important that he is a man and they are women, because I felt so uncomfortable. I found myself during the movie just at that fact. Like, and especially because they're so like praising to him and like polite to him. And I'm just in this like phase of life where I'm like, we are too polite to people that creep us out. Like, we, as women and just as humans, but I feel like women, especially growing up in the church, we are taught to like respect authority. And unfortunately, the authority is mostly male. And so it's a tricky thing where, again, we had a really great example in Mom, because she would talk to everyone as equals. But there still is that little bit of me that like, it was hard for me to watch Sister Paxton be so overly polite. She's literally like, oh, thank you so much for allowing us to go in your creepy basement. Thank you. Like, is there anything else I can do on my way down to be murdered? It's just too much. And I love it because it shows so much. It's so important to be in it. But those parts creeped me out almost more. I mean, I don't know. It adds to it. But I'm getting ahead of it.
I wonder if that's partly why they chose, like, they could have picked any religion, that have missionaries, but kind of wonder if
that's true.
Because that's a big part. I feel like that's a big part of the movie, is them just trying to play nice and be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's kind of a big part of the church.
Mind blown.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm going to be saying that a lot on here. Mind blown.
My favorite part about the whole thing, which I think is partly why we have everyone who you have here, is that based on who you are going into the film, you walk away with something different to like chew on or think about. And we all notice different things, and they did such a good job catering to everyone's beliefs. Like, it's not an anti-religious movie, and it's not a pro-religious movie either. It's kind of like catered to all of the above, and you take from it what you want or what you need. I think they did such a good job with that.
Leaving the door open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really. I completely agree. It was interesting going because we went together, And it was so interesting to like hear what everyone's thoughts were right after.
Yeah.
And it was different. Like you said, it was different for everyone. And I love that it's so open to interpretation in so many ways. Like, the ending and honestly, just all of it. I loved the references in it to like Monopoly and music. And I think that some like very Orthodox Mormons might be really annoyed by that scene, but I loved it because I love music. And also I'm just a big believer of like art inspiring art. So of course I believe that like religions inspired religions. Like to me, that's almost like a no-brainer, but I feel like it's one of those things that might make true believing Mormons very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because they just want to believe that it's like the one and only. But what's wrong with knowing that we took traditions from other places? I mean, Joseph Smith himself created this church because there wasn't one that he agreed with fully. So of course he took bits and pieces from other churches. But again, that might make some people uncomfy. I loved that part. I think that part, I wish there was more of that. I think you said the same thing, Cheryl, that you kind of wish there was a little more even of like the philosophy and like, the mental torment. Like I would have loved more rooms. That's just me and my like Alice in Wonderland. I'm like, give us more rooms and mazes and crap.
Well, there's like two movies, right? There's the top of the house where he's more like an interview or investigators talking to missionaries, and then it goes into this dark half. But I think the church stuff still kind of carried over, like obviously it did with like the premise around control. But one interpretation and correlation I thought about with our church is that Barnes, that he slit her throat. And I think it was because he couldn't control her, right? But kind of correlates with the church, like that if you're not obeying, like maybe aside from control, just like obeying, if you're going to deny the church or fall away, that you shall surely die, or and there's Mandy and I were talking about like the references in the temple that they used to make with like knife thing, and so Sister Barnes wasn't like, implying, she wasn't playing with the game, and Sister Paxton very much was. Like, she was all about like catering to him, even though she didn't want to. She just played along to probably just in her mind stay alive. But that's kind of like how
But I
it feels
just
in the
realized.
church.
Sorry, that's crazy.
Yeah, I just realized as you're saying that though, that Sister Paxton actually saw the reality more clearly than Sister Barnes. But Sister Barnes was so focused on what it could be, and she was already questioning and so focused on what, trying to trip him up and trying to see what was wrong. But Sister Paxton wasn't until she was, like
that's true, because
she
Sister
didn't
Barnes
question
picked the door of belief. You'd think that'd be the opposite. Like you'd think the lifelong member would be like, we for sure have to pick the belief door. But she's like, no, if we believe, then we should do it. No, that's true. Oh my gosh, you guys.
She was trying to please everyone until suddenly she saw the bigger picture for actually the reality of what it was.
Yeah, she was just trying to comply, which that's how she was the whole movie from the beginning too, is she was just trying to comply.
Interesting.
The temple reference though, Jake, that is big. I had not thought about that at all. It makes me think that they probably did a lot of research that we didn't even notice.
A lot of temple references. A very anti-temple reference. Instead of descending up into heaven, it's a very descending down into hell. And they have a lot of Dante hell references as well.
Dante's Inferno,
yeah. So actually, even in the movie when she escapes and she goes back into the basement and the video turns upside down, that's very much, Dante's Inferno, where, and she said too, the only way out is through. And that's very much Dante's Inferno as well. But even going through the temple, I mean, from the very beginning, at the beginning of the temple, you say, do you accept all this stuff that you're about to do when you don't even know what you're about to do? Mm-hmm. You just have to accept it. But then you accept the stuff in the temple, and then it's too late to go back. If you go back, you're dead. And they
kill you there?
the symbols.
Just
So,
kidding.
like, you know,
I
like they
haven't been to the
just,
temple in a while.
yeah.
They don't kill
Maybe
you.
they change things, Emmy.
No, I'm
He's
just,
like, wait.
I'm saying, like, there's
just
no
joking.
going back, you know,
That's
like once
true,
you go
though.
to the temple,
Yeah.
You made that covenant.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you raise your
Oh my
hand and you say,
gosh.
yes, I'm in a covenant about this, but then you don't know what you're going through until you go through it. And he said, I hope you're okay with the metal in the ceiling and the walls.
They're like, okay.
You okay with that? And they're like, yeah, great. They didn't know what that meant.
And
And
isn't it interesting when he said that, I didn't notice it either. Like, I think I was like they were like, okay. Like, I didn't even acknowledge it either
It
as a
shows
watcher.
that, like,
you know what I
yes,
mean?
and that also shows that, like, anything said in a polite and happy way sounds great until you dissect it, and then you're like, wait, what am I actually saying here? Oh, you guys, I'm loving
Yeah.
this.
Keep
This
saying
is
what you were
good.
saying though, Cheryl. Keep going. Sorry.
no, it's okay. Yeah, you go through the different rooms. I think, you know, there's the 9 layers of hell, I think, with Dante's Inferno, but there's so many gates, or the 9 gates of hell that you get through. You know, they walked through the gate, they put their bike on the first gate, they walked through the front door, they walked through the second door, they walked through the third door, they walked down the basement, they walked through the trap door, through 2 other doors, back out into the basement where it turns upside down. And there's just so many different, like,
Was there 9 gates? Seriously?
I mean, not, I think there was
That's
9
unreal.
doors. Like,
Oh
the
my gosh,
9
if
things
that's
that they walked
true,
through, and I
these
don't know if that's
directors are
intentional,
insane. That's so crazy.
but there was, I mean, there was specifically 3 to 4 places they went. They were in the living room, they went to the library, then they went down into the basement, then they went into the cages, and then, yeah, those were the 4 areas. And it's similar to the temple where you are going through those motions, and each level gets more high, and this one you go lower and lower and lower and lower. So it's very anti-temple, but I thought it was very interesting and well done.
So
in
interesting.
the way they filmed it all was very, like, even the doorknobs. Like, if you notice the doorknobs, as well as the water leaking. Did you notice that the lower they went, there was more water? Like, they were misting the women in the cages. In the basement, there was water trickling down onto the table. Upstairs, there was just water dropping into that little bucket, you know? So, like, more and more water as they went down was, and I don't know what that means, but I feel like there was symbolism there.
Gotta mean something. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure means something.
Just a quick side note, Cheryl and I and Ashlie were all talking afterward about the movie, and we were discussing the statues. The first statue that they ran into at the end of the hall when they first started going back to find Mr. Reed, and then also the statue that was behind the curtains that just looked scary. And then when he unfolded it, it was a statue. We thought, first of all, maybe that was just to kind of create like a jump scare kind of as he unfolded it, and a like mystery underneath the tapestries. Also, maybe wondering if it was another person or something. But Cheryl made the point that the first statue could have been Hades, and the second statue could have been Persephone, because Hades was the god of the underworld, and Persephone he initially captured and kidnapped, basically, and then fell in love with, and she became the goddess of the underworld, but she was initially the goddess of spring and growth. So we were talking about the symbolism of the water, and we were all making the point that maybe it was gardening and spring and things like that, which are Persephone, the goddess of spring and vegetation. And so maybe that had to do with her, and then also Hades. Cheryl said, my thought on the leaks is that it was symbolism for baptism. Paxton was talking about that being her goal at the beginning of baptizing a certain amount of people. Then later, once we learned that he had a pseudo church in his house, that was interesting as well, which shows maybe he was an extremist within religion initially, or maybe it was just all kind of part of the plot. That's my thought. And then she said it started focusing more on the wooden tube, and to me, it's almost like it was dumping the water into what I thought was a baptismal font. also, ooh, I'm so happy to hear that, because that was one part that I really was like, that has to have some symbolism. That tube that was like falling with the water. So that makes a lot of sense. Almost like a nihilistic FU religion attitude to treat dirty rainwater as his version of holy water. Okay. Then later, at the underground layers get deeper and deeper, we see that the water continues leaking all the way down to the bottom where the girls are. And he made a brief comment about how he uses the water and cold temperatures and mist to create control over the women. I made the point to Cheryl that maybe it's like there's so much water, maybe it's the living water of Jesus Christ, or symbolizing Jesus Christ or something like that. But I think her version makes more sense, especially coming from a heretic like Mr. Reed.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice?
Yeah.
We're just jumping around now, and I think that's fine. But
Yeah.
did you notice? So Jake and I went again with a friend. So we both took notes. But I noticed that the lady did you guys notice the lady that he was clipping her nails? I wondered why he clipped her finger. Like I know it, to me it was just a sign of control. Like I can cut your finger off too. But right before he did it, he said, "You're right. She did slip up." And then he cut her finger. So that was the lady that slipped
discipline.
up, or that not slipped up. What did he say? That went off books. That's what he said. You're right. She did go off books. And then that's when he sliced her finger off.
He couldn't control her fully, so she was disciplined.
Yeah. I noticed also, she said it's not real. And when she went up the stairs, I really noticed where she went this time, because I was like, wait, where would she have come from? And where would she have gone? Like, she would have noticed if she went back down into the basement. So she went up the stairs and into that side door. But he went with her up the stairs and then whispered something to her. So he probably was like, that was not okay, you know? And then he cut her finger off.
Oh, I was looking through my fingers at that point and asking Emmy what she was seeing. So I am a little foggy on the.
Oh no.
You guys are crazy.
Which is just another tie into, I mean, it's all a tie into like religion and control, but just how if you don't abide by their rules and what they want you to do and say, that you get punished for that.
I had a thought though about his religion, because I mean, control, but he tried all the religions. Like, you could tell from his house, he had all the books, all the trinkets and the portraits and everything. And with at least the Mormon church, and probably it's all about feel, right? It's all about how you feel, what makes you feel. And I'll bet for some people who don't believe in churches, they don't get that feeling. And so the control is probably what he concluded with, that like made him feel something, which is evil and disgusting, to like control women. But that's like what he landed on, maybe.
Yeah.
Because that was the ultimate feeling of power or control, or whatever.
Just self-gratification, whatever it ended up being for him. But
I hadn't thought about that with feeling, because I've heard people mention the feeling side of it, because isn't it Sister Paxton who says, like, we believe because of how it makes us feel. And I actually love that.
Precisely, yeah. He said precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like, you got it. Yep.
And I think, like, to Jake's point, people who have religion still feel things, and they still have morals, and they still, you know what I mean? Like, it's I love that part, because whether you're in a religion or not in a religion, it's showing that whatever you feel, whatever brings you comfort, like, that can be good and it can be evil. Like, it's what you do with it. And I don't know, I left it thinking, like, here is this guy who's like so smart and knows all of these things about religions, but he's also the bad guy in it. Like, he's doing these horrific things. And so I thought, man, I hope that like very Orthodox members don't take that as like a see, like, you're out of religion, you're a bad guy. Like, that's not the point. There's just so many ways to look at it. Like Jake said, you can be in a religion and be a great person. You can be in a religion and be a terrible person, and vice versa. So it's just what you do with those feelings.
But I think the point he was trying to make is that you have a choice. You have your agency with religion, but in a lot of cases you really don't. Like, you can eat that blueberry pie, and she ended up dying, but that was everything he did was like, it's a choice, but you're also forced. He had to go down one of those doors. He wasn't giving them another option, even though he called it a choice. And I think they do that a lot in religion. Like, since I'm out of the church, I'll reference my religion, but like when you're 8 years old, you don't really, if you're growing up in a Mormon household, do you really have a choice? Like, it's good that they say so and so chose to be baptized, but it's just kind of, in my opinion, the inclination.
Yeah.
I think too, people leave feeling a certain feeling or thinking a certain thing that's like a big, profound, like Ash and I were talking about it after, that I think some people could leave thinking, wow, religion is bad. Or some people could leave thinking, wow, he needs religion. Or people could leave thinking, this was more me. Wow, people extreme in religion, that's not good. People could leave thinking, wow, prayer is awesome. Or wow, maybe prayer doesn't work. Like, there's so many things like that are more encompassing. And then also little tiny things, of course, that are so mind-blowing that we could pick apart all day. I've watched lots of different like TikToks and stuff, and there are so many varying opinions about this movie.
Yeah.
Because everyone's so different and like in such different places with religion. It's really fascinating. I also heard a Heavenly Mother thing. Did you guys hear that? Does someone know the correlation well enough?
That his wife exists, but then
She's in the background.
she's in the back. She's in the back. Are you sure she's here? Like, he's like, if you really think she's here, then I'll go ask. But do you really think that she's here? Like, like she's not there, you know? And I mean, I feel like that's maybe something.
Or maybe she is there and just not present. Like, in the church, they you don't really talk about her. There's not like paintings of her.
Locked her in a freaking cage. Just kidding. No, sorry to go there. But no, that is a great point. I hadn't thought of that. I thought for sure she was creepy pie lady, I'll be honest. But then when I realized she wasn't, then I just thought, oh, okay. That is wow. That's again something that you could have a lot of different opinions on.
Yeah, because there's never an answer. There's never like like that she's not there or she is there. It just kind of like leaves it blank, which is interesting.
I think it was interesting when he was like, you're going to find out the one true religion when you get down here. You're going to find it out. And they discover, and the whole premise, like, whoa, like, it's not very surprising to me that it's all about control, right? But like, I think that she really does. I mean, in my perspective, she discovers the real true religion of sorts is when she starts talking about the prayer thing, when she starts talking about, yeah, we know prayer's not real. We know, but we still pray for each other because it makes us feel good and it makes other people feel good. And she is now like she's got this conviction of like empathy and prayer for humans and other human beings and having that. And that is what she has converted to at this point. It feels like her faith was deconstructed in the Mormon religion, maybe, but her conviction of empathy and connecting with other human beings and these women in the cages was truly what she learned out of all of this. So she truly did discover the true whatever religion, but it's just empathy, in my opinion.
Oh, I love that.
But even he was on her chest at the very end, sobbing like a baby, you know, and then, I mean, we can all have our own opinions about what happened. I think personally she dies, but yeah, I just thought it was a good way to like end it in that way.
When does she die, in your opinion?
I think she dies. I think she goes through her near-death experience when he has the thing around, like up to her neck, when he's crying in her. I think that's when it starts. I think, right, because it's too much of a horror trope for them to have like a happy ending. I think a lot of believers want to believe that she survives and saves these women and does all this stuff. And I mean, but that's the horror trope of it all. The realistic view of it, like if you look at the reality of like how they filmed it and everything, you think, I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, she dies, right? She's going through her near-death experience and she's experiencing her death in the way that she wants to experience it. Because even Sister Barnes talks about her near-death experience. She saw an angel. Well, her angel was Sister Barnes. She saw white clouds. Well, her white clouds were the snow. She had some unrealism type thing. Well, she saw the butterfly and then it disappeared. And she also, I mean, I think the butterfly was her giving herself permission to die and be like, I'm okay, I'm dead now. Like, that's kind of the end of the movie. So I think it started right there when Sister Barnes hits him with the head. I think that was the angel that she saw. But that's
Yeah, I like that. My interpretation was more that she was either like imagining or hallucinating, probably imagining like the perfect scenario. Her dead friend is undead all of a sudden and grabbing the wood, which they knew the wood was there because it broke off. So there's a great weapon that she can use to kill him off. And then she finds the piece in the puzzle to exit the house. And it's all this like perfect plan coming together. But in reality, I agree. I think he probably like slit her throat right there and they both died at that
Dang,
moment.
y'all.
I've also heard that it was him. It was Mr. Reed on her fingers, which I do like the mystery. And I noticed the second time that Sister Barnes says it like that at one point. She says mystery and
Did you
like
say
doesn't say the
Missionarie or Mr. Reed?
Mr. Reed. I've just heard it
Like
said
the
that like
mystery of it
his
all.
name is Mr. Reed, but you can also
Oh,
like
Is
just
this on
twist it
purpose?
to be
Let's ask the
mystery. Like
directors.
maybe that was on purpose. He's a mystery and trying to find out the
And
mystery of the
Barnes and
world, you know.
Noble.
And
Sorry,
Barnes and Noble.
that's a missed opportunity on there. Sister Noble. She was there in the background.
Also his sweater, like the fact that it's all the patchwork, that a lot of it is like him like dissecting different pieces of religion and ideas. And anyway, but
so
I've
much.
heard that the butterfly could have been Mr. Reed, and it was her believing and then her belief vanishing, and she no longer believes.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's also
But
ambiguous.
I personally, my interpretation is I want her. I'm one of those people. I want her to live. I want her mostly to save those women. You don't know how long they've been in there. Like, I think it's okay if Sister Paxton dies. That's fine. But I just really hope she saves the women because they've been miserable for who knows how long. They look old and, you know, I also
you're a
wonder who
believer.
they are.
Because you're a
Yeah.
believer.
Oh,
Damn
there
it.
you go.
Me
See?
too. And you know they convert Mr. Reed in the end, and just kidding.
Yeah.
That was a joke.
Everyone
That
was
was a
happily
joke.
ever after.
happily ever after.
No, that's sicko. No.
No, but I do. My hope is because her phone gets a signal. So I'm like, hey, it gets a signal. So she's got to be able to at least call someone. And then I think she dies. I think that butterfly is her. And I think she got a signal. So someone knows where to find her. They save the women and then she dies. And I'm fine with that. I feel good
like
about
it.
that.
I like it.
Oh, there's so much going on in my brain right now.
Mandy's turn.
I don't even
Try
know
to
where
say
to
it.
start. I don't even know where to start. But you know, the doors say, what do they say? They say belief and non-belief.
Disbelief.
Not belief. Not like fact versus fiction. It's just belief versus non-believing. Is that what it says? So from that moment, it's up to the viewers to decide what they believe is happening. I feel like that's like the main goal in this whole movie, like her dying or not dying. Like it's just what we decide. And I think that just comes down to like religion and what we believe and what like motivates that choice to believe. And we choose to believe the things we believe. There's no proof of anything. There's no answers to anything, you know, with religion or faith. And that's kind of like the whole movie encompasses that.
That's huge. Yeah. I was going to say too, that makes a lot of sense because everything is like factual up until that point. Even them talking about like polygamy and him talking about the board games and the history behind the board games and the song Creep and all that stuff. That's all factual. But you're right. After the scene where they go downstairs, then it's just like, we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's all up
and
for
everything's
interpretation from the viewer's
that's
eyes.
huge. Wow.
I have a couple other questions and theories real quick because it's unrelated to church stuff, but I think he was a polygamist, just taking these wives, you know, these women, and doing whatever he wants with them. And he did
brought
say
up polygamy.
And he brought up polygamy, which he said was a very uncomfortable question, and he had the used the example of like the different fast food, and he said, "I never had a Wendy," and I just think that he meant like a woman named Wendy because he has all these women in his basement. It's
That was a weird
disgusting.
comment that I was like, I don't get that.
Yeah.
But
I thought that would come up later.
Yeah.
Also, I don't trust anybody with a religion who has their favorite fast food is Burger King. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew right away.
Agreed.
Like, I knew
You're a serial killer.
She needs to get killed off.
Yeah, she's
No.
gone.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
you're right. She liked Burger King. I actually thought that. I'm like, what? Are those even still around? Yeah.
But my other question, I don't know if any of you have seen Silence of the Lambs.
I have, but it's a long time ago.
You need to watch it. It's
arguably
the number one horror movie of all time. But were on the ceiling, were they butterflies or moths?
It was a butterfly. It was one butterfly.
Well, no, but there
was
was another
one, though, I
scene
think
where
it
there
was
was
a
a
moth.
bunch. There
In
were
the
a
that
window.
was
bunch.
in the basement. There were moths.
So
They could have been butterflies, but I think they were moths.
Yeah, so in Silence of the Lambs, there's moths is a very big theme of the movie, and it's actually a serial killer who takes these women down to his basement and like he like skins them and like does all these grotesque things to them. But
I don't think I do want to watch that.
I was going to say, I think Emmy would love it because she was watching this one full eyeballs.
It's more
I don't
of
know how
a
anyone
thriller,
does that.
I
but
think everyone was, but you, Ash.
No. Y'all are crazy. Go ahead, Jake.
but I was just Googling it because like to see if there was a correlation, and it says there's a death imagery from a moth. It's called a death's head moth with its skull-like pattern, and it's associated with death and mortality and adding to the grim nature of the character's actions. So I just wonder if there's something tying like the moths to like him being a serial killer too. But
interesting. I feel like these writers and producer, like they're either geniuses and insane, or people are just taking it way further than they expected. I wonder if they're sitting back like, what are you guys thinking? Or if they're like, yep, you're getting it, you know? Like, I'm just so curious.
Fascinating, yeah.
But there is so much. There really is so much to dissect. Let's talk about the control thing with once she's in the basement, once Sister Paxton's in the basement, and she says, I know why you switched the key now, because you wanted me to know that I chose to be here because you chose for me to be here. And he mentioned several times, these women choose to be here. They could leave, but they choose to be here. But obviously they're not. They're in cages. And he's like watering them. I noticed, because people mentioned the watering can, that's odd that he came to the door with the watering can. But I have a watering can for my indoor plants, so I don't think it's that odd. But I didn't even notice it the first time. And so I noticed this time to really see what he did with it. Because I had asked you guys, and you're like, oh, he used it to water the girls. I thought maybe he was pouring it on them, but he was pouring it in a bowl like a dog, which just is symbolic of more control, obviously. You know, like, I think that's all. But what do you think? Like, why does he say they have freedom to leave? And is that just symbolic of like his idea that that church is controlling and they say you can leave, but really they've conditioned you not to be able to? Or do you think there's more to that, like logistically?
I think it feels like that when you leave church. For me, it felt a little bit like, okay, I have a choice. And that's why it's terrifying for so many people who do leave. I think that's why it takes so long. And I think that's why many people are scared to, because you are so conditioned in one way. And you're like, well, what if? Well, what if this is true? What if it is, and he keeps saying, this is the true thing. This is true. Like, I am the truth. This is the truth. Control is it. And they've, bitten off whatever he's putting out there. They've accepted now. So being able to leave feels very much like you are in a cage. And yes, I mean, for me, I just feel like when I was going through my, I guess, faith deconstruction or whatever, it felt like I was kind of in a cage and I didn't really have a choice, especially since I had gone through the temple and there was that symbolism of, you know what, you're going to be going to perdition or wherever I'm going to go. And, like there's that fear that what if it is true? What if it really is true? And that keeps people in their cage of religion, technically. I mean, for me, because I'm like, that's the scary part is like, and you don't know, sorry, and you just don't know what's outside that cage. You don't know, like, you don't know if you're going to make it out. You don't know if you're going to die. Like, you really are just like terrified to leave because you don't know what's going to happen. And especially jumping off the edge of faith and non-belief, like jumping into those depths of water of being like, what do I believe? What do I not believe? Do I believe in anything? And really having to start over again feels like death, that you would rather stay in the cage. So that's how it felt to me.
I was going to add to that he says they can leave. They could, but they'd have serious consequences. And, doesn't really like go into detail about that, but that's very much how leaving a religion feels. That sure, anyone can leave whenever they want, but you're going to have some really serious consequences when you do that. And so sometimes it's just easier to stay. So maybe that's what he means. That's kind of how I saw it, because I've left a religion. Like, sure, anyone has the freedom to do whatever they want, but like he could kill them if they try and escape. And sure, anyone can leave the religion if they want, but you're going to have to really deal with that. And that's a really hard thing to deal with.
I was just thinking about his journey, because we've been talking about like members and like missionaries and their journeys, but if he found the real church, which is control, why does he get to be the controller? Like, why couldn't she control him? If that's the truth too, like, but I wonder if they want there to be a correlation to like also like leadership in religions, or like Joseph Smith, like sending men off on missions and then taking their wives and, just controlling every situation, be like acting as the mouthpiece of God, or, but in other religions, there's, obviously the same things going on.
Yeah. I was thinking that too, that just during this conversation, that it's only truth for him. If true religion is control, then it's only for him. It's not for anyone else in that situation, So how is it real truth?
And
unless
that's,
he gave it to
But
someone
it's just
else.
his own.
Well, I think it was interesting. He was calling the women in the cage as prophets. And I think you have a sense of power, maybe, if you're being called a prophet, if you are given power by the authority, which is him, who is God of the control thing type of, if we're looking at it that way, he's giving them that power. He's giving him that label of being prophet. He's giving them that, the privilege of dying for him. So it's similar that they stay. It would make sense that they would stay if they're being called prophets and given all this power technically, and it's not really real.
And they're obviously trying to fight against it, even the one saying it's not real. It's very, yeah, I definitely picked up on the sense that like he was playing God very early on. And when he was like, what's the true religion? I thought he was going to say like, I'm God. But the control thing was so much better than that. I think him saying I'm God could have been more offensive to religions. And yet the control thing, because I'm a believer in the good parts of religion. I think religion can bring us so much joy, so much, meditation and comfort and peace. But the negative side of it can be very, very terrible for so many people. And so to Jake's point, when you were talking about, him using his authority, the only way I've been able to stay in my religion is by changing that to my authority. Like everything I do is because I want to do it. It's my authority. And I constantly leave the door open. Like I'm never going to be one of those people that are like, oh, I will be a lifelong member. I will be Mormon forever, because I don't know my future. And it brings me comfort right now. There are parts of my religion that bring me a lot of peace and comfort. And there are parts that don't. And I don't take those parts. I only take the parts that bring me comfort and peace. And so I think like that it's such a great film to highlight the negatives that can come with religion, because as great of a thing as religions have been over the years, they've also caused so many wars. Like it's like the number one thing I feel like that causes wars over hundreds of years, like, and continues to. We're seeing that happen right now. And so I think it's so important to see, like, I loved the ending because it showed that whether she believes in the end or doesn't believe, she's saying, I get peace from praying, and I might be dying right now, so I'm going to pray. That's huge. That's empathy. Those are the things that religion should be focused on: empathy, love, caring for your neighbor, those things. So I love that they brought it back in that sense, because that's a true thing too. Like they've done studies and they say that people pray when they're dying, whether they're atheist or religious or not. Like most people pray in some form when they're dying, and chaplains are a huge thing in hospitals. So I loved that ending. I like that it leaves it up to interpretation to whether she died and that was like her comfort. I love what you said about the butterfly, Cheryl, because I hadn't thought about that it could have been her, because the whole time, and because she's such a naive character, I think maybe we all assumed that she was going to die. I for sure did. I was like, this chick's going down. Like she's like the key, the typical naive. The other chick was more like main character vibes to me. So I love that they flipped that, because I thought for sure, oh, she's going to die. She'll visit her sister Barnes as a butterfly at the end. I feel like they really set that up. So the fact that they flipped it, like, just shows the genius of the directors and like the way they took it.
That's why I loved it so much, because obviously, like, I wasn't expecting it to capture so well the horror it is to go through a faith deconstruction, but then at the same time, it really highlighted what you were saying with, like, you can take what you want, and maybe there's not full truths in it, but there's parts that make you feel good, and that's what you hold on to. Like, I feel like I walked away having a little more empathy towards people who decide to stay, but also felt very validated in my experience too. Like, it was such a good mix of both, and I don't know how they did it.
That is so true.
So
yeah,
good.
how did they do that? How did they achieve both of those things?
They achieved both things. I know, it's so crazy.
It really is so well done, I think. It could have been really cheesy, and it could have been just not right, but it really left people just like, it just, I actually went to the bathroom after, and there were some people out just washing their hands, and I was listening to what they said, and I took notes during the second time I saw it. So I wrote down what they said, and they said, the concepts are wild. It had me questioning myself. And I was like, it's so interesting. Like, everyone is just so different in the way they process it. But Mandy, to your point too about leaving, I think it's also important to recognize that a lot of people think that people that leave the church, like, that's the easy way out. And it's so the opposite. Like, it is so brave to leave a religion that is safe and I shouldn't say easy, but that is safe and outlines for you exactly what to do in life. And by leaving and by questioning those things, you have to think through like what you actually believe and come up with a new system for yourself and come up with new values and okay, what are my values? What do I believe? It's so hard and so brave. So like just as far as the movie, there are a couple things that I noticed that I was like, logistically, like how did they make the lady throw up? I mean, the movie could, but like
Forgot about that part.
like how does that? I mean, these are things that don't matter. They're just a couple things that I was like, well, she wouldn't throw up that much. So maybe that's a little bit of a, not a hole, but like a, that's not realistic kind of thing. And then also the women in cages, there would be people looking for them. That's a lot of missing women, you know? But the thing that I care most about is, do you think that they were previous missionaries, but they're so old? So maybe they're missionaries from like Jehovah's Witness or just a long time ago, or maybe they're not that old.
That one like knelt and put her hands behind her back and did like that prayer. And I was like, oh, is she, I mean, you guys know more than I do. Is that like a different, she like kneeled on the ground and put her head to the floor.
I thought that. It looked more Islamic. Like,
that
more like something from Islam.
Different
so I
religious
agree.
women.
I think they were, that was my thought too, was like, oh, he's been keeping all these sister missionaries down here.
Wasn't
I
she
think it was different religious people.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Wasn't she
For
like
sure.
But how
cracking
would
her
he-
back though and stuff and like
Yeah.
making these
Gnarly.
gross noises?
Okay, I am editing this right now, and I just thought of something that maybe she bent over like that because she's been in a cage, and that is the posture that she is supposed to have, which is the posture that you would have in a cage.
She nasty.
I wonder if she knew, like, I'm old, like, I'm falling apart. This is my last prayer. I'm going to eat this and I know I'm going to die. Like, he told her, this is what's happening. You're going to do it. And
Well, he told her she was going to resurrect, so she believed him.
True.
Maybe she was so hungry too. She just was like, I'm going to eat this.
She believed him when he said he was going to resurrect, when she was going to resurrect. So, because he was trying to get them.
So do you think they all really did believe him in the beginning?
I do. I think they all believed him.
Then
they all
his trick worked the first time, and they all were like, "Oh, he's got some answers that we don't have."
But then they had to know because they're the ones replacing the women, right?
I have something important to
then
say.
he can also trick them somehow. I mean, because they're in cages, it's a form of control. I mean, keeping them in cages, keeping them freezing, cutting their fingers off, misting them with whatever poison he's misting them with to like deform their faces and not become recognizable or look like each other. And like, I mean, it's just all a form of control from him to get them to continue to stay and believe, and he can tell them whatever he wants. Because all of their power is taken at this point. He has it all. So they will believe anything he says and does, or they'll do anything he says because they have no other choice.
He even said too, I keep them peckish and cold. So he's keeping them barely alive by barely feeding them, which makes them look super old. So who knows how old they are? That doesn't matter.
I was going to say too, this is important. Imagine how nice it'd feel to just pop your back after living in a freaking cage, okay? She lives in a cage. So now I don't feel as creepy about it. Next time I watch it, I'll be like, yeah, girl, do some yoga, a little downward dog. You deserve it. This is your time.
Stretch it out.
It's like hot yoga. We got steam going. I think about this totally different now. Thank you, guys.
Glad you said that though, Mandy. I think she's Muslim. That's my vote. But I wonder how he lured them all there. Different reasons, probably different ways. Also, did you notice, the elder? That was another thing that they missed. The elder would not be alone. And our friend Akemi said in the very beginning he had a tag on. I didn't believe her, but he did. He had a missionary tag on. And I noticed this time he was at the church. That was a beautiful church, by the way. But that's not our church. Maybe somewhere. Anyway.
No, he would not be mopping a congregation floor. It would be freaking like carpet and pews and it would look
Yes.
exactly like any other Mormon church ever.
Yeah, which is very nitty
There
gritty.
were a
Like,
couple. There were a
yeah,
couple
it's
really
one
cool
little thing.
Yeah, there were a couple really cool churches though in LA. There was one specifically that we got from a Catholic church that was gorgeous that we like loved. Anyway, so you never know. But yeah, I agree. And I noticed that their names, the reason he noticed they were gone is because their names were on a list. Like they were supposed to be cleaning next, and it said 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. So I thought it's probably not that late, because my friend was like, wouldn't they, like, it wouldn't be just an elder going out to get them. It would probably be the cops. But I don't think so, because I don't know that it was that late, really, you know, because he probably noticed like 7. I mean, it gets dark early right now.
It was all within one night. Like,
Mhm.
that's, no one's going to be that worried, I don't think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he should have had a companion.
Yeah. And I also was going to say, I don't think they needed that much to go in that house. I think it is like, it adds to it to have it rainy and like dark outside. Because I think if anyone was questioning, like, how could they have gone in without his wife being there? I think most people would have just gone in that house. Like, I don't think it was needed, but it does add to like it's now snowing outside. Like that mutes the noise. No one will hear their screams. It just adds to the chaos of it. But I love how I really liked Hugh Grant, like up until just the basement scene. I'll be honest, even leading up to it, I was like, it's really hard for me to not like this guy. and I like that they do that. I love a charismatic bad guy. I love Christoph Waltz because he's always playing like charismatic bad guys, but they did such a good job on him. And I honestly, my scariest part with him was when he said, "Do you really think my wife is here?" I don't know what it was about that part where it like, he all of a sudden shifted. Like, he was so nice up until that point, and then he lets them know, like, "Do you really think your bikes are out there?" or something like that. I don't know if that's the exact part, but like, you're like, "Oh, you are not on our side." I love that.
They had a close up of him on that part, and you just see all the
That's when it
psycho in him.
switches. Yeah,
But then he
and they
goes
really
into
know.
monologues though too. He goes into mansplaining, full mansplain, but like in the best way. I mean,
I love it. Yes.
like his monologue with the belief and disbelief door and how terrifying and horrifying it is, whether you believe or don't believe, is one of the best monologues I've heard in a long time, honestly. Like, I was like, yes, it is terrifying.
They all were so good. The actors were so good. When it started, I thought maybe they weren't going to be great, the sisters, but then they were. It was so good. He was amazing, I think. What about the thing that tilted down, like the little, I don't know what to even call it, but that thing that the water, what is it?
Just the water catcher. I don't know what it is.
Water catcher thing, yeah. Where the rain was dripping from the ceiling and then the water catcher went down. Like, is there symbolism to that?
That's where I was thinking, because I was like, the water, there was so much water in this movie. It started when they were outside of his house, and it just got progressively worse, the storm with the water dripping and the levels.
I had a thought while Cheryl was talking about him watering the girls, that for some reason, the first thing that popped into my mind was like, water your testimony. Like that, it's a symbolism that's used a lot within religion. Like, we need to, water the seed, grow, and those kinds of things. So it does go back to control, but I feel like that might have been part of it, is that he's just like, I'm watering you. Like,
and he was using pruning shears to clip her nails.
Damn.
And he had the watering can the whole time. He was the gardener.
He's the gardener.
Gross.
And there's symbolism there.
We've made a breakthrough.
There's a lot of symbolism. And I also thought it was very awesome. There is a lot of symbolism, because the LDS Church is really good at metaphors and loves to put metaphors and stories together and putting things together and, correlating different things together. And gardening is a big one. There's so many metaphors within the church that the church loves to teach with metaphors.
Mustard seed, and
faith
as little as a mustard
seed. Yeah, it was full of metaphors. And I think that was so brilliant of them, because that is how the church is kind of set up, in my opinion. Like, they teach through metaphors and stories and correlating different things to build faith. And they did the same thing to maybe try and disintegrate that specific faith of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
By using different
It's interesting too, the storm, like people talk about the storm being like part of deconstruction or chaos, you know, in your deconstruction or your faith struggles or whatever. And I noticed this last time seeing it that it went back to the storm several times. And it kind of seemed to correlate with as soon as they started to question something, it would go back to the storm. And the first time I watched it, I just thought it was just referencing like, no one's going to hear them, you know?
Yeah.
But then after, and I realized all the symbolism and everything, I was like, oh, I think it's correlating to as they question along the way, you know? I don't know.
I loved too that on his monologue about whether you believe or disbelieve, it's terrifying, right? I loved the creepiness of that and how it made you feel, but he was also putting his finger over the flame, like going like this,
Yeah.
the candle, and I just thought that kind of just added to the emotion of like the terror. Whether I believe or not, like, I don't know, and so it's terrifying.
Yeah,
Yes.
and also the doors, I think maybe I already said this. Maybe I didn't, but the doors lead to the same place. Whether you believe or don't believe, we're all going to the same place, whether there's an afterlife or there's not an afterlife. Whatever door we pick, we're all on the same journey, going the same place.
I'm taking the
Wow.
side door,
Mm-hmm.
the trap door.
That, Mandy, because that could be like belief or disbelief, but it also can be like different religions. Like thinking that you're in the one true religion and you're the only
Yeah.
one that's going to make it past the door.
Yeah.
Like, you're wrong. There's going to be other people there. You know,
Yeah.
like the
And they
LDS
were
Church is like
so
a very small church in the world. You
and
know,
they were
like
so confused. Like they were talking for a few minutes about like, I think we should pick this door. I think we should pick this door. Like they were so back and forth about it. Both doors led to the same room.
yes, which I was just going to be bothered if they didn't show where the other one led, because I'm that person that like read the Goosebumps books and you like do like go to page 5, go to page 25, and I would do both. I'd be like, well, I got to see what I missed.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know what I mean? Like I would have been annoyed if they didn't show us behind the other door. So when you see both, you're like, oh, come on, Hugh. Freaking Hugh.
Yeah, but it has meaning. It's got
It
meaning.
does.
Mhm.
That's huge. Yeah. I was going to say another part that really creeped me out with him, which this is just kind of random, but when he started saying like, I'm going to ask you guys something that makes you uncomfortable, my
Mhm.
heart sunk. And I was like, why was that scary? That was not a scary scene, but I also think like it shows that when you're in the church and anyone questions anything, it can make you so uncomfortable and you're like, I don't know how to answer that. Or you know what I mean? I feel like there's so much in that because again, I think like you mentioned, Jake, I think they zoomed in on him there too. Like it felt so like, and it was so quiet. Like I just felt that uncomfortableness and you really recognize this is a guy alone with these two girls, these
Made
two
me
young
feel like
girls.
I was in a bishop's interview, but
It really
Maybe
Every
because
sister-
an uncomfortable question. Okay.
Every sister missionary should
That's
have
huge.
spray, pepper spray, and all
yes,
the tasers, all the works, you know.
yes,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, amen.
Maybe the questioning was like we are conditioned to believe we need to know all the answers so we can always be a member missionary, every member a missionary, you know, like you need to know the answers, articles of faith, all of that. And if you don't, I don't know. But also I think it symbolized his control of them right from there, you know, maybe before
He was
that.
planting seeds of doubt when he's like, have you had any signs of your dad after he's died? She's like, no. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you should start thinking about that. Like, why not? You know, like he's literally planting seeds of doubt this whole time from the very beginning. And he is testing them, like she said. He's been testing them this whole time and trying to figure out who's the more faithful one, who's the one who's more likely to believe him. and
I feel like he wanted to be creepy and uncomfortable too, because like he like joked about her dad's death with like the he
the
died of
blueberry
blueberry
thing.
pie or
That
something.
was weird.
But
Mm.
either he wanted it or he was just a creepy guy.
Yeah,
But I think he wanted to be creepy because he was singing to them. I'm a creep. I'm a weirdo. Like just
Great song.
anyway.
But yeah, the Monopoly thing was interesting. For one, I didn't know there was a Monopoly before that, an original before the one we all know. Did you guys?
Mm-mm.
No.
I
No.
love that.
I want to
whole
look it
scene.
up.
My favorite scene of the entire movie was when they were in that room.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Every second of that room.
Yeah. Me and Cheryl both wanted more of that, I think. And I knew the creep part because I'm a big like music fan. And again, I loved it because I was like, what's wrong with being inspired by other music? You know, if you make the song into something new and different. But yeah, that part too, I'm just realizing like the first version of Monopoly was made by women. The second one was made by a man. I don't know. It's just another relation on, men's control of women for many, many, many years. And it's getting better, but still work to be done.
To read even, I hadn't heard of this, but that there's like 1,000 years before Christ, there was like a story of a resurrection.
Yeah.
Did you hear him talk about that in the movie?
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys about that.
Which I've never heard of. I thought I wanted to look that up.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I have nothing. I know nothing about it.
I don't either. I
was surprised
heard him
in it.
say a couple. He also said all of these people were born on December 25th, which we don't believe Jesus was born on December 25th, but like Krishna and a bunch of different religious people. Do you know any of that? If that's true, or
I saw someone online, and I don't know if this is true or not, say that it wasn't. They said, I don't know why they put that in there because Mr. Reed up until that point had been very honest, but he said that didn't make sense. But the person that I saw this from online is not like a scholar. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if it's like accurate.
This is Emily again, and I'm still editing. I had to look this up because I had to know if it was true or not. And Google says, from sources across the web, that gods born by a virgin on December 25th are Horus, Adonis, Hercules, Prometheus, Krishna. I knew one was Krishna, so checks out, or at least is online, because it also lists Jesus, and we don't actually believe he was born on December 25th. However, maybe other Christian churches do. Dionysius, Hermes, I'm sure I'm butchering these names, Mithria, Tammuz, Buddha. That's right, Buddha was on there. Zarathustra. Super interesting. I did not realize there were other gods that were said to be born by a virgin or that were said to be born on December 25th.
I thought it was interesting that I was proud of Sister Paxton for knowing what a birth control thing was, because I wouldn't have known. When he pulled that out, I was like, I would have been like, cool, she's a robot.
You're right. Follow you wherever you need me to
She's
go.
gotta be. Yep. Let's
Really?
go. No, I wouldn't have believed him, but I wouldn't have known what it was.
You wouldn't have known it was birth control?
Did you? Jake said he didn't either. Did you, Jake?
Yeah,
No,
I've
I
had
did.
one.
You did? Oh.
I mean,
really?
but I also think that is another interesting point, that he was probably betting on her not knowing what birth control was.
Yeah.
I mean, because in the church, you really are not taught about birth control. You really are taught, I mean, if you take birth control before you're married, like, so you're not, and especially in Utah, you're not really taught correct,
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. One last thing I did want to say. I did leave wanting to go pray. Like, I did feel like inspired to pray after that. And I actually cried when she was praying for him, because I thought that takes a lot of humility and love and empathy to pray for someone that just killed you or tried to kill you, and she actually, I listened this time to the words she was saying, and she wasn't actually praying for him, even though she said it's important to pray for other people, even you, but she was actually saying, forgive me for my sins, I don't know if those were the exact words, but it was more about like reconciling things for her before she possibly died, which I think is what I would do. And maybe like pray for my kids or people that I really cared about. I thought that was a very powerful, interesting that I was inspired by that after this like very intense, graphic, horrible, like, but also insightful movie. But then I was like, ooh, all warm and fuzzy and like cried a little bit, you know? And I really did go home thinking, ooh, prayer might not get to God, but I still believe it's a good thing, you know? I don't know.
I think that shows like the emotional roller coaster that this film is, that you can leave being a little bit scared, a little bit like emotional, maybe wanting to like find your spirituality, maybe not. Like it's such a, it really is so much in one film. And I was going to say too, I forgot that he was crying during that scene. I again was watching it like this, but it kind of makes me think like maybe he also was feeling some guilt in that moment. You know, maybe he was feeling remorse and needed her prayer. Like that's, I need to watch
or
it
he's
again.
a narcissist and he's just sad that he's dying.
Or that.
When I was like a teenager growing up, I prayed for myself all the time. I was scared to death that like if something happened, like I always said like, forgive me for all my sins and all my prayers. Because I was scared of what would happen. What if I didn't pray that day and say that, you know? So
religiosity
but I kind
in
of
there.
think,
That's
a little scrupulosity, but I think what she said was really nice for people that maybe struggle with some scrupulosity, because she's saying like it doesn't work, but it's still a beautiful thing to pray for people, you know, like that could help some people that do feel like they need to pray every day because it's a commandment or God has to hear from me. Rather, it's just a beautiful thing, you know. I think that lightens it and is kind of beautiful in itself. Anyway, I liked that part. But yeah, it definitely evokes so many different emotions for so many different people. And somebody told me, they said, I heard that it was just a slasher movie of killing a bunch of sister missionaries. And I was like, no, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like there's so much to dissect and really like figure out. So I loved it. I thought it was super well done and so good.
One of the best movies I've seen in a really long time. Like you leave thinking so much. And even this conversation, like we've been talking for however long and there's still so much we didn't touch on to think about. Like I've been thinking about that movie for weeks.
And we've already talked about it. Like, we all talked about it for a long time after the movie, and then we texted each other about it and Marco Polo'd each other about it. Like there's so much. So well done. Definitely more of a psychological thriller, I would say, than a horror. I wish it wasn't called a horror because I think that scares people. I don't
agree.
watch horror at all, but I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't go home feeling like you can't turn the light off or anything. It's not even really that scary. It's more just gets you thinking, which is the best kind of movie, you know, when you can't stop thinking about it.
You may
it is horrifying. I don't know what you're talking about. But Emmy was asking me that because I saw it first before you guys, and she was like asking me about it, and I was like, I can't even explain it to you because it's not scary, but it is.
I was like, is it satanic? No, but it's
kind of like no other horror movie that has been done.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a genre all its own. Like I agree with you, Mandy. You have to see it. You have to see it to understand it.
Yeah.
Philosophical or psychological thriller. I think both. Psychological, philosophical thriller. I like that, Cheryl. Yeah.
And it's not just like a normal scary movie where you watch it and you're scared. It's like it applies to everyone's existence because everyone deals with spirituality or religion, whether they like think they're spiritual or religious or not. It still makes you think so many things just like about life and existence
and what
humanity and what
just that what your belief and whatever you believe, you know, makes you really dissect your journey of belief.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting. Some people are like, if you're LDS, you probably won't like it. I'm like, what? I think of all people, maybe there are some things that could be offensive,
Yeah.
but not very many. Very few things that could be offensive to LDS people or anybody, I think.
Yeah, I mean, some of them might hate it. So,
Yes.
yeah, it could, but I think people out of the church could also. I think it's very, I love that somebody that you overheard that in the bathroom stall, somebody saying like, wow, I really have to like, what did she say? Like, I really have to think about this. Like I think
kind
that's
of
probably
questioning myself.
Yes. Like, I hope that that's how everyone left, no matter what you believe. I
Yeah.
would love that. If you just thought, I am questioning things. Like, that is a great film.
What do I believe?
You know? Yeah. And how can I view people who don't believe what I believe? How can I try to understand them a little bit more? Yeah. Should we now review the Hot Rabbi Netflix show?
Hot Rabbi.
I don't even know what
Jake.
I was thinking Paddington too, because he
is obsessed with Paddington.
That's Jake's favorite
Hugh Grant is a villain on Paddington 2.
And he's even scarier.
There's a correlation. So
Is he?
yeah.
Wait.
Jake likes
He's the
either
villain.
This.
Jake likes either Paddington 2 or Mad Max.
Yes.
Both great.
Both horror films in their own right.
And in life, like, I have friends out of the church, in the church, like, of all different backgrounds. I have friends in their like 60s, and I have friends in their 20s, and I feel like I'm in high school. And I really like that. Like, and that, I think that's kind of been part of my like post-Mormon journey, is like, I don't just have white male friends. Like, I kind of just expanded my horizons there. So it's been fun.
That.
Ashlie and I feel that way too with meeting people of other religions. Like, oh, it's not all just white people, white LDS people. We now know lots of different people that I love it.
That's really cool.
Anyway, that's cool, Jake. I love that for you.
He has Hugh Grant as his friend and Paddington, both.
Exactly. Humans and non-humans.
Tacos.
About Paddington.
Thanks for tuning in to That's Church and this thought-provoking discussion of Heretic. A special thanks to Jake, Mandy, and Cheryl for joining us and for sharing their unique perspectives. Our experiences as LDS members of the church and Jake, Mandy, and Cheryl's experiences as post-Mormons really brought depth and richness to this exploration of faith, truth, and spirituality. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe or follow, leave a review, and follow us on Instagram at That's Church Podcast for updates and new episodes and events. And don't forget, next episode features Cheryl Stout. She's so amazing. I can't wait for you to hear it. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking, and remember, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you're always welcome here at That's Church.
I really liked the part.
It's like ASMR.
That really does sound
like
better.
it.
So the closer you can get.
We're good, man.
Mandy is my sister-in-law, not Ashley's.
Mine too.
I claim her.
Stop, you guys. Stop.
I would say I'm less active in life.
Oh, okay.
But I'm out of the church.
Oh, there it is.
Got it. All right.
I was going to say.
But enjoy the couch. All right.
We appreciate it. Clarification.
Okay.
Oh. You're going to have so much editing.
And Cheryl. No, we're leaving that. Cheryl, where are you at?
I know. I was like, we're not going to edit it all. Oh, maybe. Sorry. Oh, and Cheryl. Cheryl?
I'm Hugh Grant level. Heretic.
Whoa.
Look out.
She's got a few people in the basement. She
enjoys Monopoly, good music.
Not women, so.
Okay. All right.
It's acceptable.
I was just telling Mandy that we should have worn the Hugh Grant glasses, or the Dwight glasses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I even have them. Why didn't I wear those?
Go put 'em
we
on.
also
Get
should
'em.
all have blueberry pie in our hands right now. Which would have been on theme.
Oh, we really
Right.
missed a good opportunity.
Missed
didn't we?
opportunity. Yeah. Dang
Next
it.
time.
You, Cheryl. And her episode will come out at some point. I'm going
No.
through so many right now.
It's one
so
of my
good.
very
It's
favorites,
so
and you
good.
guys are gonna love it.
Just keep
And
it.
it's a
guys.
beautiful spirituality of your own, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so fun to hear about. So we love it.
Need to go control my kids.
Okay. This was interesting.
Go get
I
your
think
watering
this is
can,
good.
Yeah.